The people who are successful are not the ones who don't fail. They fail tremendously. They're the ones who fail and get back up and keep on going and just believe so much in what they're doing, they're willing to persist no matter what.
From tech to mental health, this video has over 100 different CEOs, from small stealth startups to multi-billion-dollar IPO. This video is in the works for over 2 years, and we're going to be featuring a very special guest at the end. So stay tuned, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. And Diane, what are you building right now?
MomSub. We connect parents and childcare providers because everyone needs a substitute mom.
So what was your journey to creating MomSub?
Well, I went through 12 different childcare providers during the first 4 years of motherhood. It was very frustrating, but finding a part-time nanny is difficult, and I want to solve that problem for others.
What is something you should stop doing to take your startup from good to great?
Well, stop doing something that you don't really believe in. It really has to be a problem you want to solve and a mission that you really believe in. Not just, I want to do this because someday I want a unicorn and be ultra rich and have everyone know me. That's nice too, but you have to really believe in the problem that you're solving.
What would you say is the hardest part about getting into this space of entrepreneurship?
Literally just kind of knowing where to go and what to do and who to talk to. The people who are successful are not the ones who don't fail. They fail tremendously. They're the ones who fail and get back up and keep on going and just believe so much in what they're doing, they're willing to persist no matter what.
And Dan, I don't want to call you old here, but
Better not. I'm
that
experienced. I have a lot of wisdom.
But one thing I'm always curious about is that if someone could go back to their 20-year-old self with all the experience that they have, how would they build the product that they're building right now differently?
Well, my 20-year-old self didn't understand the challenges of being a mother. I would say, don't be so resistant to doing something like being a business owner. That means that you're never going to have consistent income. I fell into entrepreneurship accidentally, but I'm glad that I did because it really has been something that has enriched my life, and it continues to provide me with so many new challenges.
Thank you so much, Diane.
Thank you.
Amazing. And what does Cleanster do?
And Cleanster connects property managers and homeowners with professional, vetted, and assessed cleaners.
What was your journey to founding Cleanster?
Cleanster started originally as a marketplace to connect employers and freelancers, but we noticed that people were using our services for finding cleaners, and they were getting quality cleaners. So the idea behind it was, one, the cleaning industry is very hard to maintain, and two, quality control is very, very important.
What is the best piece of advice you ever actually received from your founder?
You have to go to the market, you test your thesis, watch your team build something, and then you follow up with the technology.
What is one stereotype about founders that just isn't true?
Founders don't know shit. If you're a founder, your job is to solve the most difficult problems. If you cannot solve the most difficult problems on yourself and have good people help you extend it, you're not a good founder.
I'm Khalid David.
And what are you building right now?
So we are revolutionizing the $1.2 trillion construction finance market. Imagine going from a checkbook to Zella Cash App to understand your real-time financial implications.
So what is the hardest thing about being a founder in your space?
In my space in particular, construction is going through a digital revolution. And the hardest thing is that it's decentralized and most people are exploring technology for the first time. It requires a lot of education, but there's a larger cultural shift that's happening across the industry, and that's the challenge as people kind of get cultural shift.
What do you think is the best piece of advice that you've ever received from a fellow founder?
For the kids, close your ears. Fuck with those who fucks with you. That's the best advice that I got. It means so much on a lot of different levels. From an investor standpoint, I'm saying oftentimes we beat our heads against the wall trying to convince folks, but we do so much further if we just ran with the people who see the vision, who's bought in.
So Rod, what are you building right now?
Right now, I'm building Holm. At Holm, we're working on the future of websites for years now. People are still paying other people to build, maintain, and manage their websites because they are still too difficult to the modern person.
So in your experience, what is the hardest thing about being a founder?
The hardest thing about being a founder is knowing that it's going to be hard. You forget sometimes that it's supposed to be hard, right? Because resilience is extremely important. You can't stop when it gets hard. Like, you got to understand that you chose to do a hard thing and continue to grind through it.
What do you learn from being a founder that no other role or profession will teach you?
That You just learn that the world doesn't really move like you think it moves. You'll apply for something, I get into it, and then you realize that everybody else had a connection when they apply, and that's how they got accepted for something.
So how do you create great connections with other founders in the space?
Coming to events like this, it's hard for me to connect digitally. I don't have Twitter or anything like that. So like coming to events like this, finding people that are intentionally trying to advance themselves in person, and then just aligning myself with them and seeing what they got going on.
What is the hardest thing about building in your space?
That's a good question. I think the hardest thing is for anybody at this point, we're a very social media reliant product. Create a super clear, concise message with a lot of clarity that if somebody sees this, they're gonna know what I want to do, what I'm doing, are gonna click to learn more. That's the hardest thing, is working on the proper verbiage to describe your idea and make sure it's gonna resonate with who it needs to resonate to.
What is the worst piece of advice that you ever received from a fellow founder, and why?
I think most people's advice is bad. I think anybody who tells you what you should do, I always caution that advice. You'll have founders say like, oh yeah, I grinded, we raised 500,000 pre-seed, we did all this, but their 500,000 pre-seed came from their uncle. You feel me? Like we got different stories. I ain't got no uncles that give me $500,000. So I feel like the worst advice is that they don't give you the context of their advice.
And Ricky, what are you building right now?
The VDOM. We are the first ultra-humanistic prosthetic.
So what has been the most difficult part about building in the space?
It's been being able to, especially for our device, help people understand the differentiation between a sex device and an actual medical prosthetic. So we've been having to focus a lot on education and a lot of our marketing being organic and be community-centered.
What's a piece of advice that you've received from another founder?
One of the best pieces of advice that my founder has given me is to trust your team and to give us free reign of creative freedom. Our team is completely composed of queer people of color of all spectrums and allowing us to bring our own, not only individual experience, but expertise to the plate to make sure that what we're building is unique to our identical audience.
What do you think takes good startups to great startups?
Is your brand and your team. A lot of people will invest in a brand before they invest in a product. You don't see a Porsche or Maserati riding around with commercials, but everyone works hard to afford one. That's the same type of mindset you want to carry with your brand. And as a founder or a leader, you have to trust the people that you're hiring to carry that vision with you.
What is the best marketing strategy you ever come up with?
So the VDOM itself is solving a problem for trans people, queer people, those living with disabilities. We were able to find the common denominator that touches all of these audiences and communities and bring a vulnerable conversation and a vulnerable issue to the table. And although we have a very serious topic and a serious product and problem we're solving, we see that we approach it with joy. Our buzzword for our brand is euphoria, and we make sure that people experience it in every encounter, even our team.
What is the most important thing about making an authentic and viable product for people?
Is remembering your why. Startups, especially in any phase, you can get tired, you can get burned out. It can get very, 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 very hard and very heavy. And if you only focus on the monetary aspect, you only focus on the numbers, you only let those be your goals, you're going to get disappointed. You're going to fail at some point. But if you focus on the reason, on the people that you're touching, on what got that idea sparked in the first place, and keep that at the forefront, that's going to keep your passion fueled.
What does MotMot do?
So MotMot puts robots into drinking water mains to assess the infrastructure for cities.
And what has been the most difficult thing about building MotMot?
Man, the most difficult thing about building MotMot, it's like you have to really sell the vision before you put the first screw together, which is interesting.
So what do you think takes good startups to great startups?
Hire slow, fire fast, right? So it really comes down to the team and putting your folks in the best position to succeed, and then acknowledging when it's not working out to also move pretty fast.
What's the best piece of advice you received from another founder?
Oh, the best piece of advice I received from another founder. I guess be careful about who you go in bed with as far as venture capitalist funding, right? Like, you have the opportunity to choose who you put on the cap table, and you don't have to say yes to everybody that wants to be part of that cap table.
What has really got you through all the struggles, all the hardship that has come with being a founder?
You got to have people that are close to you that can act as sounding boards. You cannot do this journey alone. Absolutely invest in your relationships.
What is one stereotype about founders that just isn't true?
I think that, and the part of this is true though. So a big stereotype is there are folks that will start a company for the wrong reasons, and they want to just make a dollar and be their own boss. What I'll say is those people tend to wash out pretty quick. The founders that stick around longer and are more interested in building something of value and not just the quick dollar, those are the ones that deserve it the most, are the grittiest, and will succeed.
And Sean, what is your journey to the startup space?
In 2017, 2018,
we decided to almost do an internal research and development department, and we started working on some of this technology. We realized that there was this huge space to create more technology to better impact the logistics industry, and that's where we are right now.
What is the best piece of advice you received from other founders?
Find a bunch of really cool people who you enjoy working with, because you're going to spend a shitload of your time on it. It's going to take up a lot of your time and your effort.
What is one stereotype about founders that just plainly isn't true?
A lot of people think that their founders are like really brilliant and smart. I'm pretty sure I'm just about average. I think they just spend a lot more time thinking through the problems that need to be solved.
Like Steve Jobs said, the world was made by people no smarter than you.
Joe Goodall, co-founder of Luna.
And Joe, what does Luna do?
Luna is a health and wellbeing app for teenage girls and non-binary people to help them through adolescence with any questions they might have about growing up.
What is the hardest part about building Luna?
We're a holistic app, so I think making sure people understand our brand and constantly getting the word out there, that's quite difficult.
If you want to be a great founder, what should you stop doing?
That's a really good question. If I can flip it and say what you should start doing, I think you should start with focus. Start with focus on what do you want to build and who do you want to build it for and why. What is the why behind it all? And if you can't understand and can't articulate your why and why you're building it, then you need to start figuring that one out.
What is one thing that you would have changed during the process of making it?
Good question again. I think that means listen to their gut and listen to their intuition, because 2.5 years ago, we had people saying, this isn't needed in the world. You don't need an app like Luna. This is never going to work. Go back to your day jobs. And we're here now at TechCrunch. So wow. Look at that.
What is one habit or skill that you need to start developing if you want to take your startup to the next level?
You need to embody your startup and you need to really live it. But there is a fine line between burning yourself out to the ground and having nothing left to give and actually doing well. So it's also about taking care of yourself as a founder.
Manu Kumar, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hi Hello.
What was your journey to create Hi Hello?
So Hi Hello is actually my 6th to 7th startup at this point. I previously co-founded Carda, and before that have started a few other companies, one that was acquired by LinkedIn. But I started this company because it's a problem that I have faced for an incredibly long time and nobody was solving it the right way.
So what are some of the best things that you've learned being a serial entrepreneur?
That no startup is easy. Every single startup always takes work. It always takes more effort than you think it's going to take. So I would say for any successful company, there is no kind of easy path for that company.
What's going on, you guys? I'm with
Karen Chaffee, co-founder and CEO of Agenda Hero.
And what does Agenda Hero do?
Agenda Hero is an AI platform that eliminates the tedious, boring, manual task of getting things onto your calendar. We convert text, images, and PDFs into calendar events.
What is one habit that you've utilized to be successful in the startup industry?
Talk to the people who have the problem that you are trying to solve. I personally love to do is spend my weekends reaching out to people who are using our product and just saying hello and inviting them to share feedback and get in touch.
Lupita Almohana.
And what does Stressie do?
We help optimize the wellness solutions for corporations.
What has been the most difficult thing about building Stressie so far?
Leadership is one of the most challenging things that I've been working on for the past 6 months as our team has grown from 1 person to 11 people. So it's been incredibly challenging, but also very rewarding.
What's good, you guys? I'm with
Tafari Bailey, CEO and founder of Hutsy. We're really targeting individuals that don't qualify for traditional financial planning, leaving millions of people without the guidance they need to make informed financial decisions.
What was your motivation to creating Hutsy?
My motivation for creating Hutsy was my time working at retail banking. And during my times there, I had a ton of people coming to see me on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in order to get a short-term loan for something that may have happened. Somebody's car tire popping, a single mother needing to put food on the table for her family, somebody needing emergency dental surgery, but unfortunately it wasn't me approving or denying individuals, it was an algorithm.
What has been the hardest part about building in the financial services industry?
The hardest part about building a financial services industry is, number one, finding product market fit. I believe they say the average unicorn startup pivots 9 times before they figure out what their main product is.
And Philip, what are you building right now?
We're building, it's a toolkit for leaders to provide mentorship to anyone through interactive playbooks and instant access to guidance.
And what was your journey to building?
For a long time, I was a content creator. I made music videos, commercials, documentary films, dabbled in it somehow.
So when going through the journey, how does having a background that's very non-traditional, say and our background
Yes.
helpful in building in the startup economy?
It's a rare discipline in that you have to create complete things. It's incredibly difficult, but it gives you a lot of skills you need to convince other people to be interested in your product. So you've got a great sense of aesthetics, you know how to communicate vision.
What do you think drives great startup leadership?
A lot of people have their own narrow concerns and they're not looking for mutual benefit situations. They want just someone to help them. And if you can figure out how you can help each other, you're going to get a lot further.
We're building Mablab. It's a 501 test strip to test for lace drugs and spike drink.
So together we've been working on this product for a little over 2 years now and getting ready to launch our product in the next couple of months.
And where are you guys on your founder journey?
So I was PhD at Harvard and Vienna PhD at Columbia.
So what is the hardest thing about being a student founder?
The hardest thing about student founder is trying to balance both classes and startups, which is basically a full-time job.
I think the biggest problem for me was shifting from the student first to startup second mindset to the startup first to student second shift. There was, I think, a bit challenging for me. I remember doing calls, random stairwells and in the bathrooms and stuff like that, which is not super great.
What would you say takes good startups to great startups?
I think you can have a really great idea, but it comes down to execution at the end of things. So whether that's like how you as a team work together and collaborate, or that could be just how you as a leader work to help incentivize your team. I think
If you're committed to the startup, you have skin in the game. It depends on you, your work, how much dedication you put in. So both the co-founders, the team's also dedicated as well. They have the same vision to build the startup, but also like a lot is riding on it. Like you personally, if you took leave after from school, you have things at risk that you're leaving on the table to build a startup. So I think that's good motivation for you to continue working on it.
And what was the motivation to create Mablab?
Mablab was inspired after we both lost a close friend to a drug overdose. So since then, we've been working to prevent drug overdoses from laced drugs and drinks by building a testable and affordable test strips to make sure that anyone can be able to use a test strip wherever they might be in the world.
And Raghav, what's your journey to the startup space?
I just started the company to solve a very personal problem of mine. I grew up in a culture where love was expressed through home-cooked meals, and I had seen enough people in my life having had to sacrifice either providing freshly cooked meals or taking care of themselves. I did not want to have to make that choice with that and my career, and so I decided to start it.
What is the most difficult thing about building in the consumer electronics space?
Generally speaking, the most difficult thing about building in general is just being patient. You get a lot of rejections, you get a lot of people saying no to you, and staying true to your conviction is literally the hardest thing.
What has been the best piece of advice that you've received from a founder?
Ideas are a dime a dozen. There are enough people out there who have ideas, so just plan on execution and don't be afraid of sharing your ideas with the world.
What is one stereotype about founders which just isn't true?
Most founders are really frugal. I believe they try to live way below their means and they try not to spend a lot because they know how hard it is to survive for the next 2 years. And so most founders I've met have generally been super frugal.
And D'Angelo, why did you choose to create AllPeeP?
I just found it hard to really connect and build deeper relationships and connections. So I decided to just pivot, right? Because businesses need to have their own community platform, most importantly, inside of theirs.
What would you say takes great startups to excellent startups?
It's really being obsessed with the problem that your customers are having, pivoting. So like doing things that's not scalable at first until you figure out that value proposition and business model that will really work for your targeted customers, and ensuring that you have a system in place where you can continue getting feedback.
When you're aspiring to be a great founder, what is something that you should stop doing?
You should stop just listening from a closed-minded perspective. Depending on the target audience or the problem that they're trying to solve, start interacting with those you believe are your people, your community, and start getting feedback. Thank you, D'Angelo. Appreciate it.
And this, what is your startup?
Startup is Yumari. We do cross-border manufacturing. So you tell us what you need manufactured, when you need it, by how much you want to pay for it, and we will match you with the most appropriate and relevant manufacturer in your region.
What is your journey to being a founder in the space?
Well, I dedicate my whole life to supply chains. I started when I was very young, 22, 23. I started working for the government in Mexico doing promotion of trade. I then moved to China, lived there for 10 years, trying to understand how they had lifted 700 million people out of poverty. And then actually worked for Alibaba for 4 years and left Alibaba to build Yumari.
So when going through the process and being a founder, what is one thing you've seen that takes good startups to great startups?
Product market fit, that's the only thing that works. A lot of people just stay in the idea that they have of what it should be, what their product should be. Well, we usually got to go out there and start talking to customers.
What is the biggest hurdle that you faced
while trying to break into the space?
It was raising. I didn't know much about fundraising. I didn't know how the VC world worked. And so I almost got tricked by a bunch of like very abusive funds. But then actually I found some really good investors and they coached me through the process of fundraising. I ended up raising a very successful pre-seed round, which helped me a lot to get off the ground.
Thank you much, Andres. And Lester, what is the startup you're working on?
So we developed this application thinking about how to make the opportunity to create wealth for Latinos.
What is the best piece of advice that you've received from a fellow founder?
I think that we have to be creative first. Second, don't be fear to go out and do things by yourself.
And what are you guys building right now?
Rituals, which is a social scheduling app allowing users to create their own personal planners and then share their plans with others in a radius-based location social media format.
So what is the hardest thing about building in your space?
I mean, the youth tomorrow, 5 years from now, is going to be so different from today. So just capturing the future markets, not just the current market, is really the key. And that's a very challenging thing to do.
So I'm also wondering, what takes good startups to great startups?
But honestly, I would say execution is everything. Ideas are cheap. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you're not the team to do it, you might as well give up now.
It takes good founders to great founders.
I would say being dynamic, not having an ego, willing to take a lot of constructive criticism. You're not right, your customers are right.
What was your journey to getting into the space of startups?
Started when I watched the movie called The Social Network and how exciting it was to add that element of business. I became very excited and I suddenly wanted to start my own company. After that, I attended a big event called the Web Summit in Lisbon in Portugal. And that event changed my mind. I met lots of founders that told me about their experiences. And it essentially inspired me to create my own company, Brito Consulting.
What do you think separates good founders from great founders?
How I view it is that the founder is essentially the person that pours blood into the living vessel that is an organization. And good founders, they're not able to connect a team or create essentially the culture that motivates the employees to work hard and to do their best as great founders can. You can see this in Elon Musk at the moment. The things that he's able to do with SpaceX, it motivates his employees extremely well.
Neeraj Sharma, I'm CEO of Radiansys INC. We are a software services company. We help our clients develop SaaS products.
When building in the startup space and creating a startup, what has been the hardest thing?
Hardest thing is to identify the right business idea. You don't want to do something which is already overcrowded. So having the right idea and be the leader is important.
What has been the best piece of advice you received from a fellow founder?
Believe in yourself, invest in yourself, take the risk.
If you could be 20 years all over again, what would you do differently?
I will found a company much earlier.
Why so?
Once you grow older, then there are other responsibility comes and your risk appetite goes down.
So we're building market intelligence for defense contractors, helping them predict solicitations way ahead of time.
We've had a lot of success recently with signing on some pilot partners, helping the defense space. We're really good in Army, really good in Navy. We're able to predict solicitations 12 to 24 months in advance.
What is something to give us pieces of advice for someone who wants to take their startup from good to great?
Sell before building. You can have plenty of people who want your product and tell you they want your product, but really money is the ultimate equalizer.
I would say probably just shoot for the moon. I think the reason startups exist is because there's so much innovation to be had in so many different places. If you just go take a crazy idea and just try and figure it out. I think honestly, that's where the fun happens and when you build something pretty incredible.
What is one stereotype about founders that just isn't true?
That we work nonstop.
I'm with
Lance. My company's Witching Hour. We build robotic systems that insulate power lines to prevent power companies from starting wildfires.
This is your first startup?
No, this is my 5th startup. Most of them have been in the food and beverage space.
What do you feel that startup founders right now are just not doing enough of?
They're creating vitamins instead of painkillers. So the best companies solve big pain points.
Is there anything you wish you knew before you started?
Ownership, responsibility about everything about the company. So when I started my first company, I was under the impression that we'll be somewhere in a year. Just because as time passes, things grow and things get better, which is, you'll find out very quickly it's not the case.
What are you currently building?
We're building a company called Metronome, which does usage-based billing. So we help those companies launch, iterate, and then act on insights.
What has been the most difficult part about building your startup?
I think the most difficult part is that choices we're making are going to pay off until again, years down the road.
So what do you think takes good startups to great startups?
Execution speed. It's all about moving quickly, making a lot of rapid shots on goal, and then learning from your mistakes and iterating quickly. You as a founder have to both make decisions personally and enable your company to make decisions without you.
Fabrice Pachet, CEO and founder of ULALO.
And what does ULALO do?
We allow any kind of company struggling with multi-party automation to do it seamlessly without coding.
So what was your motivation to create?
I went into a very difficult situation 2 years ago. My 1-year-old son is swallowed a screw actually, and he was about to die. And I went to a hospital, to an emergency. And on my way to the hospital, I had a car accident because I was very stressed. And same thing happened for the insurance. So I wonder why in the 21st centuries are not finding a way to work more efficiently to solve our needs.
What was the hardest thing about building it?
The hardest thing about building a company was basically to get the right sales process, marketing, automation, and finding also the right resources.
What would you say it takes good startups to great startups?
I used to think that mental health is not really something to be considered, but you have ups and downs. And when you're in downs, it's always good to find people who are the same journey as you.
And what is the best piece of advice that you received from a founder?
If you solve a real deep problem, success will follow.
If you want to take your startup to great levels, what is something you need to stop doing?
Rest. I need to sleep a certain number of hours. I need to push myself to go to gym because all that is important for my health.
And Lee, what are you building right now?
We are building a specialized AI biologist that mimics the immune system to aid in drug development.
And what was your journey to creating that startup?
I was doing a lot of biology and background, and ultimately they also have really good and strong potential just in different areas. But so we really just wanted to give the industry some type of in silico modeling that enabled them to do multiple hypothesis testing simultaneously. And
so what has been the hardest thing about building in your space?
Access to the space. It's quite an untrusting club of individuals. I think pharmaceuticals is quite tough to get in touch with the right people inside of that space. So
what do you think takes good startups to great startups?
That's a really good question. I think it's all really about execution. I think a lot of people, they build in basements and they don't really listen to people and they don't really understand what the customer is actually after and what they want. And so you kind of got to be out there talking to people constantly to try to figure out what the nuances of that problem is.
What do you do right now, and what was your journey to getting there?
My company is called TeamOut, so we help other companies plan team of sites and corporate retreat.
What is one thing that you wish you knew before you started being a founder?
People tell you like have to go fast and get things ground as soon as possible.
What is something that a lot of startup founders overlook?
I'm going to go back to my earlier point, but I think things really take time, right? And sometimes, now a specific example, we had the first year, we already had something that was working, but it was barely working. And it was just like we had to literally work on 20 other projects that made the initial thing work better. So now we have a profitable business model and things are working, but it was just, it wasn't clear at first.
What is the best piece of advice you ever received from another founder?
10 years in the making, overnight success. This is really what it takes, right? You hear all of these like stories, crazy headlines of this company. I've just literally been on the App Store for one day and it just have a million of users. Oh my gosh, how they do it. And I've been around for 10 years, right? If you want to build an edge, if you want to build a product that people want and people tell their friends about, it usually take time, right?
Hey, Antoine, nice to meet you.
Anand, what are you building?
So I'm building an AI tool that is capable of understanding what are your processes, repetitive web processes, and automate them.
What do you feel has been the most difficult part about building this company?
You need to figure out the idea, build the team, build the product, bring investors.
What is the best piece of advice that you've received from other founders?
Make something people want. That seems simple, but honestly, a lot of people are building stuff because they imagine that people want that, but nobody wants, in fact. So the best way of doing it, for me, is to fake it the product. My first version of the product was 1 year ago, and we tell to users what they wanted to have, but it didn't exist. And we make them pay upfront to have access to a tool that didn't exist. Because if people pay for a product that they didn't even see a demo, it's because you're solving a real pain point.
What is one stereotype about founders that just isn't true?
There is no common path to be an entrepreneur. You can be a dropout, you can have 10 years of experience. You got friends that are like 15 and are building startups,
nobody cares about who you are, what is your career. They just want to have their problem being solved.
Hi, I'm Eijiro Tsukada. Nice to meet you.
Nijiro, what is your journey to the startup world?
So my first startup was about 7-8 years ago at the age of 42. But after working huge beverage company in Japan over 2 decades, and then to open the Stoneville Matcha Cafe in the Mission, San Francisco.
What is one thing that you wish that you knew before you started?
I went to Stanford Business School, where many my classmates, immediately after graduation, they started their startups. Some are really going well, some are not. I think that each person having a really different, unique life. You be unique and then you live your own life.
What is the best piece of advice that you've received from another founder?
At the end of the day, you are living your own life and then you are making yourself really unique. That is really important.
Ruzbetari the co-founder of Hatchless.
And what does Hatchless do?
At Hatchless, we make meat without killing animals.
What was the motivation to create Hatchless?
The meat that we consume today, the ones that we buy from our supermarkets, there's so much carbon footprint that it really has a truly negative impact on our planet, and it will continue to have a negative impact on our planet and our population and future generations.
So what is the hardest thing while building in the alternative meats industry?
Consumer adoption. So I think one of the challenges has been we as consumers, the ones of us that have consumed meats or other foods for all of our life, be it cheese, be it meats, we know how it's supposed to taste. If it's off by a little bit, we're gonna feel it and we're gonna know it. So the challenge is really trying to make the exact same thing that we're used to eating, but in a different way than what it has been over the past century, decades, whatever the case may be.
What do you think takes good startups to great startups?
Tenacity, vision, and really not taking no for an answer. A lot of people that share the same passion and the same belief that you have as a founder. You know, one of the key aspects of being a founder and going down this crazy path, not really knowing what's going to happen, and really need to have the passion to be able to move your product, your company forward.
What is one thing that you need to stop doing if you want to be a great founder?
Ego. Ego, no place for ego. To know what you know, you have to know what you don't know. And you have to trust the people around you to be able to fill in the gaps and be able to push you a little bit.
All right, and I decided to turn the tables on him and actually ask you some questions today.
So I've been a creator, so to speak. I've been making YouTube videos since I was in 5th grade. So I used to do a lot of gaming videos, but now I focus more on how to democratize careers, especially consulting and product management, for people who don't know how to get into those roles as well, because 95% of students don't go to target school.
If you could basically reach out to the right audience that you want to, and just in an instant, the message that you want to give to them, what would you say to them?
That's a really good question. I would tell people to just go for it. Go for whatever they've been thinking about, whether that be creating a startup, whether that be making a YouTube channel, or whether that be just going and chasing after an internship. Whatever it may be, it's not worth it because you're on this earth for how many years you are, and life is too short to give up.
That's an awesome response. And I have to say, you totally demonstrated that today as well, because you walked up to me at our booth. Yeah. We started chatting and then you're like, hey, can I interview you? And I just want to say kudos to you for doing an absolutely amazing job. And I hope you get to use this interview on your channel as well.
FM 22 meningin pa